Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome back. In lecture 17, we will continue with waste generation. So, the different concepts that we will cover in this lecture are on waste minimization, extended producer responsibility, waste minimization steps that could be taken by ULBs, source segregation, segregation of waste at the overall urban level, residential segregation, non-municipal solid waste. We will take a global outlook on that, and we will do a case study on waste segregation practiced at Corporation of the City of Panaji. So, when we talk about waste generation, automatically the first thing that comes when we consider the hierarchy of waste management, or hierarchy of when we say integrated solid waste management, the first thing that we need to think about are the 3 R's, that is to reduce, then recycle, reuse. So, these are the 3 R's that we talk about. So, within that, the first one is to reduce at source, and to certain extent also reuse as well. So, both these particular strategies are very, very important, and then this particular approaches has to be adopted by every ULB. So, what are the different aspects or components of these particular strategies? The first thing that we have to be has to conduct is to improve the awareness among the people, and also we have to conduct several educational programs, and this is not only targeted for the residential population, but also for the different commercial establishments. It could be also targeted towards all the industrial establishments that are there in an urban area. So, we are not talking about very large industries, because large industries should be responsible for their own waste generation and own waste management and disposal. But for small industries which are like garages and other things which are there inside the urban area, so ULB actually does a lot of handholding for managing this kind of waste, and for them also ULBs can conduct awareness as well as educational programs. So, what are these awareness and educational campaign programs are for? It could be for domestic composting, that ULBs may encourage the domestic composting process. That means, it may encourage people to do composting at their homes and use the compost in their in their gardens and all. So, they can teach people how to do composting. They can even help them provide some kind of structures, or they can make them available so that people can buy those kind of structures where they can do composting. Then, campaigns for reducing use of specific non-recyclable or non-reusable or toxic material. They may also ban certain kinds of things, like for example, in many places products such as single-use plastic has been banned in India, right? So, that means we can either ban, or we can also say that that certain specific things which are not that good for the environment, which cannot be recycled, you should gradually reduce use of that. So, we can create some programs on that. And finally, also certain things like we can also create awareness campaigns on promotion of materials substitution. That means, already there are certain things which people use, but if there are some alternative better materials which they can replace that with. So, for example, instead of using normal batteries, if you use rechargeable batteries, then probably you don't generate so much amount of waste. So, these are the different kinds of educational campaigns or awareness campaigns that could be conducted. Along with that, we can also do bans. Our ULB can also put specific bans on specific products for certain areas. Then it can also encourage green procurement. Green procurement means it encourages buying of materials which are more green or more sustainable or more environment friendly. For example, they can say that they can promote use of paper bags, or they can promote use of like rechargeable batteries. So, these are more better substitutes for the actual ones. And along with that is also extended producer responsibility. So we have already discussed EPR earlier. So the broad term has been explained that the producers of certain goods and all should be responsible even beyond the consumption phase, and they should conduct certain programs or certain measures. They should take some measures so that they are able to take care of the waste that is eventually generated, or they can we will do a little bit of more discussion on this in the subsequent slides. So, in addition to that, we can go for on-site business and industry assistance programs. For example, within the businesses, within the industries, there could be certain campaigns or certain programs which could be run both by the industry or maybe some NGO or some other organizations, where they may promote use of e-office so that paper is not utilized, or the government can also make some laws that certain kinds of things could be done via e-office, but at least they can make those things allowed instead of keeping paper printouts and all this. And also double-sided printing can be made mandatory. All these things could be also taken at the office level or at the business level. Then involving supermarkets and retail stores. For example, the supermarkets is where a lot of people come to shop, and because that is where people undertake buying decisions. That means they actually buy certain things over there. So we can educate consumers on what are the better choices, what are the greener choices, what are the better packaging material, or how they can reduce packaging material, or how they can reduce the use of plastic. All these things could be more taken care of in the supermarket as well as the retail store. So a lot of programs could be generated as per that. Then promoting material exchange and reuse programs. For example, used furniture, used vehicle, used many items. If we can create a program in the urban area, sometimes there are, as you know, that there are mobile phone applications like certain brands are there which actually help us to exchange products, right? So that could be also facilitated at the ULB scale also. Like for example, ULB provides a transportation system for some heavy material, like for example, furniture and all. So that service, the ULB may make that service available so that people, once they decide to buy a used material, that could be easily transported, right? So that is how you can promote exchange. And then the other two aspects that ULBs can also take, these are more prohibitive ones. That means either they can institute a pay-as-you-throw program. That means the ULB can create some laws or bylaws in this case, which says that if you throw this quantity, you would be charged so much amount. If you throw a bigger quantity, you would be charged at a much higher rate, right? Similarly, if you throw certain kinds of items, you would be charged also extra for those items. For example, construction and demolition waste, I can charge extra because these are waste which weighs a lot compared to the normal residential waste and so on. So variable waste management charges, that means we can also fix different charges for different income groups. We can fix charges as per different areas of the city based on what kind of services we are providing, and also based on what amount of garbage people are throwing, we can set variable charges. So these are some of the strategies using which waste can be minimized. Now coming to extended producer responsibility, we already had an earlier discussion on this as we just was explaining in the previous slide. But in general, the benefits of this extended producer responsibility are manifold. There are many benefits of it. And usually this, as you can see, that it helps a lot, but without any kind of law, any kind of legislation, people or businesses are usually will not do this kind of programs. Why? Because it costs money, right? If the producer wants to be responsible for the product beyond the consumption phase, it has to invest money in that, right? It has to, charge extra for that. So usually there has to be legislation which facilitates this, right? So at national or the state level, there has to be some directives of legislation which say that there is mandatory EPR task that has to be undertaken by certain businesses or certain establishments. So what are the benefits of this? So definitely, if I do this kind of programs, then definitely some amount of recycling will happen. That will lead to reduction of virgin materials, or that means raw resources we take from the environment, that will be reduced because we are recycling or we are reusing something. Particularly, this would be true for packaging and containers and so on. Like we have just talked about aluminum cans being recycled by beverage companies, right? So in that case, that means we are reducing mining of aluminum from the mines, right? We are reducing virgin material. Then incentives for energy and resource efficient product design. So that means there has to be some tax cuts or some kinds of incentives given to the producer if they adopt some alternative material which are more environment friendly. Maybe the cost will increase, but it would be much better. Then overall, because we are reducing the total amount of waste, the MSWM cost reduction will happen. Lot of packaging and all this thing, if the companies themselves take it back and for further recycling and all, definitely that needs to be handled by the municipality or the ULB. So in that case, there will be cost reduction for the municipality. Sometimes this kind of programs result in customers also getting some amount of monetary incentives. For example, if they have to return a product, like suppose after use of paper, they have to return it so that it could be recycled, and they get paid for that. So this could be also beneficial for the customers as well. And finally, to make this all happen, the role of the ULB is to provide some sort of infrastructure or a collection center so that this kind of recycling can take place, or this kind of collection of this material can take place, so that eventually it goes for recycling. So this promotion part or provision of infrastructure part is the role of the ULB, which has to be undertaken to support these EPR initiatives. So what are the different kinds of EPR initiatives in general? One is the deposit refund system, where consumers are charged an additional amount initially, which is returned when the container is returned. Same goes like if I drink a cold drinks in a glass bottle, then the retailer doesn't charge me anything because I'm returning the bottle there itself. But if I take the bottle away to my home, then I will be charged extra money. But when I return the bottle again back, then I will be given back that amount of money. So this kind of schemes are there, and that actually helps in. That means the customer gets a return, and that encourages them to undertake this kind of a exchange activity. So the next item is quotas. This is another EPR initiative where the product or packaging should contain a certain amount of recycled material. So that means there could be a mandate from the government that any product that a particular company or a particular sector produces, they should have a certain amount of recycled materials by law. So in that case, they are bound to do some amount of recycling. Then product bans and product charges. So we can, in case some material is used which is not good, then there could be, those material could be banned by the ULB or by the government. They can say that, yeah, this particular material is harmful to the environment, this cannot be recycled, so this material should not be used. So even though it is of lower cost, but because it cannot be recycled, overall cost is actually higher. So in that case, we can actually ban it. Or in other way, if I cannot ban it because immediately we cannot, there is no alternative supply and all, other issues are there, economic issues are there, production issues and all these things are there, then instead we can charge some extra tax if this material is not suitable for the environment. So either you can deter by charging extra tax, or you can ban it altogether, right? Finally, there are collection systems which are retail outlets, and producers can be jointly made producers can be jointly made responsible for return of packaging and used products such as batteries. So that means we design a collection system where in the retail itself, like when you go to buy in a supermarket, there may be a counter where you can also return back batteries and all this, where the producer will directly take it from there, right? So this kind of collection systems are there, and which is adopted in many countries, and even in our country, many retail chains have adopted this kind of practices. So what kind of steps the ULB can take? So we have discussed about the different strategies for waste minimization or reduction. We have talked about EPR. Now, what do the ULPs need to do? So what are the things that the ULB should facilitate, right? So the first thing is the ULB in our country, there is a very informal sector of kabaddi system or scrap dealers or waste collectors. So what the ULB can do initially is to identify and register this kind of scrap dealers and recyclers, so that the information is available with everybody. And it can also decide, and it can make this information available via any channel, via social media, or via some sort of campaign, or via just a website, and say that this is where this kind of recycling is happening, so that people can have more access to those kind of systems. Similarly, if some kind of recycling, like we have different waste streams in the municipality. Now, certain recyclers are there, but other scrap dealers or other recyclers or other kinds of products are not there. So we can also determine what is the potential for setting up new facilities as well. So that's the role of the ULB. So the second role is to identify and quantify the main generators through robust data collection system. So usually ULBs do collect the garbage, but they also need to collect the data. That is, data on how much amount of garbage is being generated, where it is generated, who is generating what is the characteristics of that garbage, and so on. So that robust data collection system, if it exists, then we know exactly that how much amount of garbage is being generated, and what kind of garbage and what kind of recycling we can do. So this would be easily quantifiable. So that is another role of ULB. Then we have to also identify targets as per their potential of waste reduction. Like, for example, how much reduction can happen at the residential level, how much can be happen at the market level or at the institution level, and accordingly we have to design specific programs, or for different kinds of producers or generators. We have to design separate approaches, and these approaches has to be supported by municipal bylaws and viable collection and recycling system. So that means not everybody is suitable to do every kind of recycling. Similarly, not everybody is will do it if there is no law. So for different generators, different producers, we have to create different sets of laws, or we have to provide different infrastructure, so that this kind of recycling is facilitated, or eventually we can reduce the amount of waste. Then to support all this, the ULB should have its own institutional mechanisms, and capacity has to be upgraded so that it can deal with this kind of new systems, or this kind of, we have to create new departments to deal with this. Then a big part is, of course, creating awareness campaigns, advertisements, and so on. And sometimes we can involve schools, colleges, women's group, and the business community of that urban area, so that this can actively be this kind of recycling programs, or this kind of waste minimization programs could be taken. So the other aspects specific to India is, because we have a very informal sector and all for this particular scrap dealing and all, then this EPR initiatives that we were talking about earlier, this should consider this informal sector as well. Because EPR initiatives usually involve the big businesses and institutes and all, so they may not consider this informal system, and they only look for commercial alternatives for recycle, collection, and all this. But maybe we can also involve the informal sector in our country, or informal scrap dealers. So probably that would be that may lead to a lot of economies of scale, or that may actually lead to a lot of benefits. Now, legislation has to be framed, as we have discussed. Then we can go for eco-labeling standards. Products could be labeled that how green it is or how environment friendly it is. So certain eco-labels needs to be coming up, but there has to be some standards for that. Otherwise, anybody can claim my product is green, right? So there has to be some standardizing organizations which will tell that yes, this product is so much green, or this is the energy rating of that product, right? So that ULBs, or in the country, we can actually develop this. Then some are there already, and then we can go for eco-industrial parks. That means in our country, whenever we are setting up industries, let us, instead of setting up standard industries, we can set up eco-industrial park, where we bring together industries which can depend on each other. For example, products or byproducts from one industry could be utilized by the another industry. So immediately in the near neighborhood. Otherwise, what happens if it is far away? Then either you have to transport it, which makes it unviable, or the product may be of such nature that it may not be transported. We have to treat it locally. So all these issues are there. So sometimes industrial ecology is one area which we can focus on, and we can improve this via setting up of eco-industrial parks, where material and resource exchange and codependencies has to be, considered while setting up these industries, and we can set up industries which complement each other. Then once we have done with minimization, that the next strategy that ULB should look at is source segregation. That is, first we reduce the type of waste, the total amount of waste that is generated. Then we look into how do I separate the different categories of waste. Now, as per Solid Waste Management Rules 2016, as per duties of waste generators, source segregation has been made mandatory. That means everybody has to segregate. Now, what is the amount of segregation? That is again a different issue. By law, we have to do a certain amount of segregation, but municipalities which are progressive or ULBs which are progressive, they can go for further segregation. Now, why this segregation is important? Now, segregation of course involves sorting to be done at the household level, but sometimes households are inefficient. That means people may be casual, they may not be doing it in such a way. So there could be other facilities which actually take up the sorting of solid waste that is generated in urban areas. And particularly we can depend, the households more or less do their sorting if it is mandated by law. But sometimes big bulk generators which generates a lot of quantity of waste, they may do sorting, but because there are a lot of actors involved, there are a lot of people involved in the collection process over there and so on, there may be some issues. So we can take this waste to a sorting center. We can actually separate the waste into different waste components. And why we have to do that? Because if we do that, segregation will help in optimizing waste processing and treatment technologies. So that means for each type of segregated waste or each waste stream, we know exactly how much amount of waste is generated, what is the character of that particular waste. Like for example, if I am taking out combustible waste, then I need to understand what is the energy content of that waste, right? So based on that, I will take a decision, should I take it to an incineration plant or do I have to do some further processing to remove moisture? So all these things we have to consider. So, but obviously this segregation, if you don't do segregation, nothing of this is possible, right? So as per MSW rules, we are supposed to divide our waste stream into biodegradable waste, non-biodegradable waste. Sometimes biodegradable is called as wet waste because there is a lot of moisture in it. Non-biodegradable waste is called dry waste because usually there is no moisture, but sometimes there can be. Then comes the domestic hazardous waste, which we have defined earlier, and construction and demolition waste. So within non-biodegradable waste, further we can have recyclable waste, that means waste which could be recycled, non-recyclable waste, combustible waste, sanitary waste, and non-recyclable inert waste, right? So this may be dirt and certain things which we cannot neither recycle, neither we can burn it, right? So things which we can burn, we may burn it, we may not burn it. So the characteristic, there is certain amount of energy content that has to be there. But as a policy, the ULB may decide that I will not set up an incineration plant because incineration leads to pollution. But even whatever methods you take to reduce the amount of ash content that goes into the emission, still it happens, right? So I may decide that I will not go for a incineration plant. So there is no question of combustion. But if I can generate a lot of energy by combustion, and even though there is some pollution, but the energy that I will generate compensates for that, because otherwise this energy would have been generated via through burning of coal, which would have generated further emissions, right? So in that way we can decide on this non-biodegradable waste could be further segregated into these categories, and accordingly we take the waste according to those particular facilities or centers, those will be processed. For example, recyclable waste could be taken to a sorting center from where it would be, certain materials could be recovered from there. Then non-recyclable material can go to the landfill site, combustible waste can go to the incineration plant, and so on. So obviously if I segregate waste, then the contamination is also low. That is, we don't get contaminated waste in each of the facilities or centers, right? So that means I don't need to do sorting in-house. So if I have a compost plant, that means I am going to use the organic components and I am taking it to a compost plant where it will be converted to fertilizer. Now, if the waste is not properly segregated, automatically there will be a lot of mixed items in that, this organic matter or that biodegradable waste. So I have to first set up a center where I can take those things out. Then I have to put it for, making of compost. So that means this contamination would be lower if I do the segregation properly. Transport is also efficient but may increase cost. Transportation is efficient. Why? Because we are taking each kind of waste separately. But because we are now breaking it into different categories, and if we are not utilizing the full capacity of the vehicle because the volume is now reduced, then there may be an increase in cost, but overall it improves efficiency. Then this obviously, if I segregate, is easier to recover the materials for reuse and recycling. And finally, the methane generation in landfills is less due to removal of biodegradable and organic matter. So that means if the organic matter, biodegradable matter goes for composting, automatically that doesn't need to go to the landfill, and that will reduce the amount of methane generation. So in addition to all these kinds of waste, we also have industrial waste, and particularly waste that is generated within the jurisdiction of urban bodies. And this waste can be generated by processing activities of different kinds of industries. It could be solid, liquid or gas. It's based on the state of that particular waste, or this waste can be either hazardous or non-hazardous, right? So there are different ways. So for hazardous, there will be some way to handle it. For non-hazardous, at least for municipal bodies can at least handle the non-hazardous part, right? So large industries manage the waste themselves, whereas small scale industries, this is where the ULB has a role to play. And for example, like garages, electroplating industries, dyeing industries, like coloring, where you can paint and all, they generate a lot of waste, but these are all within the urban area, even within residential areas as well, right? So municipality can design a separate collection, transportation and disposal options for this kind of industrial waste that is generated in urban areas. So let's take a look at the different kinds of waste. So you can see there is food waste, combustible waste, non-combustible waste, street waste, and within street waste there is it is collected from the different kinds of streets and the parkings and the vacant lots. It includes street sweeping, leaves, dirt, animal droppings, dead animals and so on. So sometimes street waste also will include the drain waste, right? So drain waste is when municipal workers clean the drains, they will lift the sludge that is accumulated there and put it on the street. And the municipal workers are supposed to clean this as well. But if you put this sludge inside the normal waste stream where there are a lot of leaves and all, and probably you take it to the compost plant, then it will be contaminated because this sludge will contain a lot of pathogenic bacteria and so on, right? So we have to be careful what we should take together and what not. And this gives a list of what kind of broad items are included in this kind of waste. So for industrial waste and sludge, solid waste resulting from industrial processes, manufacturing operations such as coal ash, which comes from thermal power plants, blast furnace slag, which comes from iron and steel plant, and steel melting slag. Then aluminum, zinc and copper produces some sort of red mud which has to be also stored. So we have seen in many Indian cities where there is a aluminum smelter or a plant which melts aluminum and produces something, there is huge areas which are covered with this kind of red mud. So these are dump sites which looks very bad also, but this is a byproduct of this particular process. So how do I handle all this? And even though the industry will buy some land in that urban area, it will start dumping over there, or it may buy some land just outside the urban area and it may dump their waste over there. But there has to be certain measures taken from the ULB side also to handle this kind of waste so that they could be disposed of with proper areas, with proper lined areas, so that contamination doesn't happen in terms of leachate or other air pollution and so on. Biomedical waste and hazardous waste could be includes pathological waste, explosive, radioactive materials. and these are collected from households, some from households, some from institutions and hospitals, and this could be taken to specialized facilities where they will be treated. Now, this table is given by CPHEO in the Manual for Solid Waste Handling and Management. There you can see that for residential segregation, we have to segregate as per wet waste, dry waste and domestic hazardous waste. And as we have discussed earlier also, domestic hazardous waste includes e-waste. E-waste is printer cartridges, electronic parts and so on. Hazardous waste, which includes chemicals and solvents, paints, oil, lubricants, glues, thinners, herbicides, insecticides and all this, right? Batteries from flashlights and button cells, light bulbs, tube lights, CFL bulbs, lamps, car batteries, all these things are part of the domestic hazardous waste. So, this all has to be dealt with, and household medical waste includes thermometers and other mercury containing products and discarded medicines and so on. So, as you can see that wet waste is pretty, we know that it includes the different kinds of food items or different kinds of after cooking, whatever are the rejects that are coming out like eggshells or vegetable peels, all these things comes out. Along with that, we can have paper towels, some wrappers, which your food wrappers, which are not biodegradable, fish and meat, which also can be thrown when they are thrown away. So all this becomes part of the wet waste. Now, still some wrappers and all these things remain in the waste stream. Usually people are not able to throw it separately. If they want to throw the whole packet away, they will throw it together. So that's why even in a compost plant, we require some sort of sorting activity that has to be taken up before even the composting process can start. So whatever segregation we do, some amount of material still remains. Now for dry waste, the manual suggests like we can further categorize it. Like for example, if a ULB is able to achieve basic segmentation like wet waste, dry waste and hazardous waste, then if they feel that there is further possible to engage people to do further segregation, then they can even segregate as per paper, cardboards and cartons as one category. Other kinds of containers and packaging of different kinds like Tetra Paks, plastics, this could be another category. Then rubber, wood, discarded clothing, furniture, this could be one category. Metal and all these things and the other inert waste, this could be one category. So it depends on what categories that particular ULB will create, but you can do some categories like this. So coming to the non-municipal solid waste, that means which as we have discussed like C&D waste or agricultural waste from the surrounding areas, industrial waste, these are not part of the municipal waste stream. That means ULBs usually don't deal with it directly. So, but this is a significant amount of waste. Even the electronic waste, the hazardous and medical waste, like from hospitals directly the waste goes to specialized treatment facilities where these are actually autoclaved or incinerated, some kind of processes could be undertaken. Now, electronic waste can go to the manufacturer back and they can have some setups for taking out certain chips or certain metals and so on, or it could go for informal recyclers as well, where they take out some material from that particular PCB boards and for other components and all. So what it says is that means there is significant amount of waste that is generated, which is beyond the residential or commercial or the standard waste that is generated in urban areas. So to give you an idea, industrial waste globally is almost 18 times greater than MSW. Agricultural waste is about 4 times more than municipal solid waste. Then C&D waste in India at least, we don't have a separate system for handling it, even though some new setups are coming up, some factories and all these things can do some further processing on C&D waste for using them. But usually, in most cases, C&D waste goes into the same landfill as normal municipal landfills. So, during the estimation of the size of a landfill, we have to consider both kinds of waste. Then, hazardous medical e-waste are treated in specialized facilities such as chemical processing plants, incinerators, and disassembly centers. To give you an idea, if you look at the waste generation, e-waste as well as industrial waste generation, you will see that Different countries also generate different amounts of this waste. For example, very high income countries, they generate a lot of industrial waste. Why? Because these are industrialized countries. They have a lot of industries which produce a lot of goods and they sell it all over the world, right? So obviously per capita waste that is generated is 42 kilograms. Why? Because they are generating these items and they are exporting it to all over the world, right? Or maybe for local consumption as well. E-waste is around 0.05 kg per capita. Whereas if you go to the lower level countries, you see that this value, like lower middle income countries where India is, this value comes to around 0.36 kg per day per capita. So you can see that this also is an indicator of the industrialization level of our country. And similarly, you can see e-waste generation is also low, 0.01. So over here, you can have an idea about what is the overall, percentage or what is the share of industrial waste, agricultural waste, construction and demolition waste, hazardous waste, medical waste and electronic waste in the overall waste stream, which is beyond the municipal waste. So finally, we end our lecture with a case study. This is for the Corporation of City of Panaji, and usually they have adopted lot of measures so that they can reduce waste, they can do proper segregation of waste. So we will talk about that. So Corporation of the City of Panaji, and along with schools and colleges in that area, this residential welfare associations, local leaders and celebrities, together they have come up to create a very comprehensive integrated solid waste management plan for their city. Their idea was to reduce the amount of waste, or at least not to send waste to landfill site or reduce it significantly, right? So initially they initiated this segregation. They said that 2 bins were provided for wet and dry, collection of wet and dry waste, and they achieved 100% collection. But after that, in 2015, when they were saying that, well, everything is fine, people are doing segregation and all, they further divided into 8 streams, like 8 waste streams. What are those? And each with different color coding. This is for wet waste, paper waste, plastic bags, metal or glass, non-recyclables, tetra packs, cardboards and plastic bottles. Now, why specifically these 8 categories? There is no mandate on that. You can decide on this. But why it is determined like this? Because as per the schemes or the opportunities that is there in this ULB, you can decide that if I take out tetra packs, then probably I have some way to actually sell those tetra packs or reuse those or recycle those tetra packs. Same goes for metals or glass and so on. So that means as per the opportunities or the facilities or infrastructure that you have, you can decide on what level of segregation you have to go for. So in this image, you can see different colors are utilized, are shown. Each color represents a different kinds of item, this 8 kind of categories in which you have to put your waste. So every material recycling centers stations were set up in every colony so that people can go and put materials which could be recycled, right? Where certain things even like for example, they can return some amount of hazardous materials as well. So this kind of recycling stations were set up. Then decentralized composting units for community usage. So this was also set up in residences, and hotels can actually do composting locally. Then they did tie-ups with a lot of recycling units so that for bulk segregated waste for different kinds of bigger generators and all can be directly taken up by those recycling units. Then they initiated a lot of EPR initiatives, right? So they had made tie-ups with local dairies so that they pay for returning the washed plastic milk bags at local booths. People were able to return the milk bags after washing them into the local booth, and they used to get paid for that. Then Tetra Pak company, they made scheme, a scheme with them so that they buy back their empty Tetra Paks so that they can reuse. Co-processing of plastics and other dry fraction rejects. So 2 baling machines were procured, which baled or compressed the waste into pellets, into square this items. Compressed this plastic and other materials were formed into a rectangular or a square cube, and then it was taken to those cement plants, which is around 250 to 600 kilometers away, where they were used in co-processing for generating energy or heat and so on. So that is how the municipality did a lot of initiatives which can improve or segregation, which can reduce the quantum of waste and so on. And they did have to tie ups, and accordingly they also encourage people to segregate. Hazardous waste were taken to a treatment, storage and disposal facility TSDF in Karnataka. Now, talking about the organizational structure of this municipality, this was headed by a waste management officer. It has got a solid waste management cell and a sanitary inspector with oversees 15 supervisors in each zone. So, and similarly for each supervisor looked into certain number of sweepers or people who help in collection and all. Centralized complaint redressal system and quick response vehicle. So, they also took in complaints and they had a quick response vehicle to address some complaints, like some sort of spillage of garbage and all these things. There were vehicles to actually address those. Public communication strategy, green and black bins were provided to the residents at subsidized rate so that they can do initial segregation. And then further for bulk generators, it was further segregated into other categories as well. Regular meetings to disseminate program details. Cultural programs were conducted like music festivals, fairs, carnivals with message on civic hygiene and citizen responsibilities. So you have to do overall, you cannot just say that ask people to segregate. You have to design systems, you have to promote, you have to create awareness campaigns, you have to make people participate in your programs. Then only it would be successful. And finally, user charges were also collected for all these activities and all. And other revenue sources that the municipality also generated were from sale of compost, sale of segregated waste for recycling and so on. So this is how this is a very nice case study where a successful waste minimization and segregation program was taken up by the city of Panaji. These are some of the references you can study. And to conclude, waste minimization and segregation are the most important strategies in municipal solid waste management, which determines its effectiveness and outcome. And a coordinated and participatory approach involving all stakeholders is required for successful implementation of these strategies in urban areas. So, thank you.